Hello everyone. Uh, in the previous video, we have learned about implicit intelligence. So today we are going to learn managing tasks and active. So how to manage your task? What all the task has been running on your Android device? How to manage those tasks and how to manage the activity. So as we know about in Android, there will be a backstack where your applications will be, if you are not using, if you are closed with application, there will be a backstack which is running on the background. Okay. So in which the tasks for your app contains own stack, own stack. So every app contains its own stack for the activities. So the user has visited to use that applications where the user navigates for the around the applications where the user will be navigating around the applications. So an app contains its own stack for the activities that user has visited while they use app. So it means that when the user wants to visit an application, so for every activity, for every application contains its own stack for each of the activities which is running within the application. So when the user navigates around an application, the activity instances for the task are pushed and popped from the task for the task. So if the user wants to perform some task on that particular activity of that application, the user navigates around the application. So the each activity instances it has been created. So what task has to be performed, whether it is to be pushed or popped from the stack. Most of the time, the user navigation from activity to activity and back again through the stack is straightforward. It's straight at a stride. The user can move from activity to activity or going back through the stack mode. So if so where depending on the design and navigation of your app, there may be a complications. So especially how the designing has been done, how the navigation should be done, the developer has to take care about the navigation of the activities when the application starts or if the user wants to perform or any activities. So how the activities should be navigated. So if the user wants to change the normal behavior, so if the user so if user means if the developer wants to change the normal behavior, the Android provides number of ways to manage tasks and the activities with those tasks. So which are those number? Which are the ways where the Android provides? So that is activity launch modes and task affinity. So activity launch modes where it used to determine how an activity should be launched. So it means this activity launch mode in this way it tells us how to determine an activity should be launched. So in the task affinities, where this task affinity way indicates which task is launched activity belongs to. It means that which launched activity it is belong it is belonging to. So these two number of ways. Let's see with an example first about this task managing task. So for example, see consider you have an app with the three activities. So you have an application where contains the three activities. Let's consider that three activities as A, B, and C. Where in this application, where A launches B with an intent, where A is going to launch, A activity is going to launch the B activity with an intent. So through an intent, A activity is going to launch the B activity and B launches the C activity. Whereas in turn, C sends an intent to launch a A. So as we see in this diagram, where first we are going to launch an activity. So through the intent, we are going to launch the activity B, where the activity B comes to foreground, where activity B goes to the back stack and it has been stopped where the activity B is running. So what happens? The activity B launches the activity C through the intent, whereas the activity C will comes to the foreground and the activity B and activity A will be in the backstack. So what happens in C? So C in turn, so it is going to launch the activity A without going for the B, where C is going to launch the activity A. So that is launch activity A. So activity again, what happens if you do like this? Again, the activity will be creating a new instance. So whereas in the backstack, all will be in the backstack. So what let's consider. So for example, if you have an activity C. So say if your activity C can be launched from the second app with an implicit intent. So by using an implicit intent, do the C, we are going to launch the activity C, where the user through which application through the second application. The user runs the second app where this second app has its own task and its own backstack, where the second app contains its own stack and own backstack. So the second app contains its own task to perform where it and also it has its own backstack. If the application uses an implicit intent, so if this application uses an implicit intent, so if this application uses an implicit intent to launch the activity C, what happens when you want to launch the activity C through the implicit intent, where the activity C is going to be launched by creating a new instance, where and it will be placed in the backstack for the second application's task, where your app still has its own task and its own backstacks, where the C has its own instance, where the C activity has its own instance. So what happens? So much of the times, no need to worry about the activities how it is going to work, because most of the time Android default behavior, where there will in Android there will be a default behavior for performing tasks and activities work fine, where don't want to worry about how the activities are associated with the task. So most of the times, the Android will be having a default behavior to how the task and activities will be working fine, whether it is working fine, where we need not to worry about how your activities should be associated with the task, how the activities should be associated with the task, or how the activities or the applications will be there in the exist in the backstack. So no need to worry about this. Normal behavior will be taken care by the Android itself, where it has a default behavior. So if the developer wants to change the normal behavior, where if the developer wants to change the normal behavior, where Android provides a number of ways to manage tasks and activities. So which are the number of ways? As I said, there is an activity launch mode and task affinities. The activity launch mode we use it to determine how an activity should be launched. In the activity launch mode, we will take care that how we are going to determine how an activity should be launched. So the developer will see that how the activity, each activity in the application, how it is going to be launched, on what way it is going to be launched will be taken care by the activity launch mode. And the second way is task affinity, where this task affinity indicates which task launched activity belongs to. It means that which task is working and which activity has been belong to. It means that which task is launched. It means that which task is running, that particular task is belongs to which launched activity, that is task affinity. Let's see one by one. So first one is activity launch mode. So activity launch mode, where it is used to indicate new activities, how new activities should be treated when they are launched. So in the activity launch mode, where it is going to indicate that when we launch a new activities, how it is to be treated, how the new activities to be indicated, and how it should be treated with the new launch activity. So so if they should be added to the current task or launched to a new task, it takes care, it indicates that how to treat means that is they should be added to the current task or launched into the new task. So, so define launch mode. So how we need to define the launch mode for an activity? So how we are going to use this way, that is activity launch mode way. So we need to define the launch mode for the activity. How we are going to define? So it is going to be defined with the attributes, where this particular attribute is you defined in the activity element, where this particular activity element will be present in the Android manifest, or we can define with the flag sets. So where we can define the launch mode for the activity with the attributes or with the flag sets. So flag sets on the intent that starts the activity. Flag sets will be used where the intent that starts the activity. So what is this activity attribute? So as I said, you can use activity with the attribute or a flag set. First, we will see with the activity attribute. So activity attribute, to define the launch mode for an activity. So if we want to define a launch mode for an activity, as I said, we need to use an attribute. So how we are going to add that attribute? What is that attribute? So we need to add launch mode attribute. So we need to add launch mode attribute. Where we need to add this launch mode attribute? This launch mode attribute should be added in the activity element, where this activity element will be present in the Android manifest file. So this is an example how we are going to add a launch mode. So Android colon launch mode is equals to standard. What is this standard? See, what is this? So what is this standard? So it takes, so this launch mode attribute has a 4 launch modes available. There are 4 launch modes available. That is standard, single top, single task, single instance. So what is the standard? So standard will be the default launch mode. Standard will be the default launch mode. So new activities are launched and added to the backstack for the current task. So if we use the standard launch mode, so new activities are going to be launched and added to the backstack for the current task. So an activity can be instantiated multiple times. So in this launch mode, an activity can be instantiated multiple times. So a single task, so here in this launch mode, a single task can have multiple instances for the same activity. So multiple instances can belong to the different tasks also. Multiple instances can belong to the different tasks, different tasks. So next launch mode is single task. So next launch mode is single task. So in this launch mode, if an instance of an activity exists on the top of the backstack for the current start, an intent request for that activity arises. So if we use a single top launch mode, for example, so if any particular activity is present where that activity exists, where it will be existing, it will be exist on the top of the backstack where it is currently performing some tasks. So where here an intent request for that activity arises. So whichever the task is already exist, activity exists, for that the intent request will be arrives for that particular activity, where the Android routes that intent to existing activity instance rather than creating a new instance. So it means that, so if already there is an activity exists on the top of the backstack which is already performing current task, if through the intent request, it is going to send to the existing activity instance. So whatever the existing activity instances is present, it will send the request to the existing activity instance only, rather than creating new instance. So rather than creating a new instance, it will send the request to the existing activity instance only. So a new activity is still instantiated if there is any existing activity anywhere in the backstack. Next is single task launch mode. So if we use, what happens if we use single task? So when an activity is launched, the system creates a new task for that activity. So if we use a single task launch mode, so if we use a single task launch mode, So whenever the activity is launched, so whenever the activity is going to be launched, where if the activity is going to be launched, the Android system creates new task for that activity. Whichever the activity is going to be launched, for that new activity launched, it creates a new task. So what happens if the task already exists? So if another task already exists, if there is another task it is already exists in that with an instance of that activity, the system routes that intent to the activity instead. So it will route the what the Android system will route where it is going to be routed. So it is going to the system will route that new task to the activity which is already there. It is a single task. Next is single instance. So next is single instance. So where the single instance is same as single task, what is different? So if it is same, then what is the difference? So see, the difference is that system doesn't launch any other activity into the task holding the activity instance. So if what happens in the single task, if there is whenever an activity is going to be launched, the system creates a new task for that activity. So what happens in single instance? System doesn't launch any other activity. It means whenever already there is a task holding that particular activity instance, the system does not launch any other activity. So this activity is always single and only a member of its task. So this is a single task. So that it does the system will not allow to launch any other activity if it is already having a task performing with the activity instance. So these are the four launch modes which is going to be used in the launch mode attribute. So next we will see about intent flag. So intent flags. What is this intent flag? So here the intent flags are options that specify how the activity that receives the intent should handle that intent. So it means how the activity that receives the intent should handle that intent. So it means that so whenever the particular activity receives an intent from another activity, so how it should be going to be handled. So how it is going to be handled through the intent flags. So intent flags are defined as constants, where these intent flags will be already defined as a constant, where it will be defined, where this intent flag constants is going to be defined. It is already been defined in the intent class. So there is a class called intent, where in this intent class, so the intent flags constants has been predefined. So where these flags will be start with the word flag underscore, where this intent flags is going to be begin with the word flag underscore. So how we are going to add intent flags to an intent object? So if you want to add an intent flags to an intent object, how we are going to try? Through the method set flag or an add flag. So we can add intent flags to the intent objects by using the method set flag or add flag. So in this intent flags, there are three specific intent flags to control the activity launch modes. So there are three specific intent flags, where three specific intent flags are used to control the activity launch mode. So which are those three intent flags? Flags underscore activity underscore new task, flag underscore activity underscore single top, flag underscore activity underscore clear underscore top. So all will be in a capital letter, where all these three are constants. So what is this first one? Flag underscore activity underscore new underscore task. So if we use this flag, it starts an activity with the new task. So it starts an activity with the new task, where this behavior is same as a single task launch mode. So this behavior is same as the single task launch mode. So what happens if you use an flag underscore activity underscore single underscore top? So if the activity to be launched is at the top of the backstack, route the intent to that existing activity instant. So in this single top, this is also same as a launch mode single top. Single top launch mode, what I have been explained in this slide, the same as the single top. This Intent flag is same as the single top launch mode. So next is flag underscore activity underscore clear underscore top. So what is this intent flag? So an intent, if an instance of the activity to be launched already exists. So for if you want to launch an activity with an instance where that instance is already exist in the backstack, destroy any other activity on top of it. So if there is any other activity on top of it, it is going to be destroyed, and that whatever the intent which is going to be launched through the activity, so that is going to be root with the existing intent. So that is going to be root with the existing intent. So when used in conjunction with the new task, when this flag is used with this conjunction with the new task, that is flag underscore activity underscore new underscore task. So this flag locates, what it locates? It locates to the existing instance. So whichever the instance is existing, it will locate for that existing instance of the activity, which is where that activity is performing any task. So, and that particular activity will comes to the foreground where the user can use the activity, perform the operation. It is about the activity launch mode. So next is handle new intent. So how to handle the new instance. So whenever the system, the Android system routes an intent to an existing activity. See, for example, if you have an existing activity instance, if the Android takes to the intent, whatever the intent request will be there, that if the Android system takes that intent request to the existing activity instance, then the system will call on a new intent callback method, where the system is going to be called method callback method, which is going to be called callback method, that is on new intent. So what is this on new intent? So which this on new intent callback method will be called just before the on resume method. So in the activity lifecycle, we have learned on resume method, where this new intent callback method will be called just before the on resume method. Okay, on resume callback method. So what is this on new intent method? Where it includes arguments. So this on new method will take arguments. What are all the arguments it is going to be take? So the arguments is new intent that was routed to the activity. This new in on new intent method includes an argument that is new intent, that was routed to the activity. So it takes new intent, that which intent it is going to be passed, where that is going to be route to the particular activity, where this on new intent is a override method. On new intent is a override method, where it is going to handle the information for the new intent. So this on new intent method is an override method, where it is going to handle the information from the new intent. So the get intent method. So what is this get intent method? We need to remember this. We need to have a note on this get intent method. So get intent method. So get intent method always retains the original intent. Get intent method always retains original intent that launched the activity instance. So this method is going to be retains its original intent. So what original intent it is going to be retained means whichever the activity instance is going to be launched. So this get intent method is used to get access to the intent that launched the activity. So it is going to get access to the intent that launched the activity. So whichever the activity is going to be launched, where it is that intent is going to be accessed through the method get intent. So this is the override method of new intent. So public void new intent, where it is going to be intent when the new intent is passed as an argument. Well, you can have a code where set intent object is passed over here. The override method of on new intent. Next way to change the normal behavior is task affinities. So till now we learned activity launch modes. Now we see task affinities. So task affinities indicates which activity, which task an activity prefers to belong to when that activity is launched. It means so whenever you are having an activity instant is going to be launched, so which task to be indicated that particular activity prefers. So if one activity prefers one task, another activity will be preferred another task. So it means which activity to be preferred. It means which task has to be performed on particular activity. So where, when it is going to be performed, which task belongs to when that activity instance is launched. When that activity instance is launched. So by default, so this task is, so here by default, all activities belongs to the app that launched them. So whichever the activity has been launched, so by default, all activities belong to that particular app. So where, see here, activities from outside an application launch. So if there is an activities that is outside application, outside an app which is launched, so it is going to be done through implicit intents belong to that app to say that send the implicit intents. So to define task affinity, so how we are going to define this task affinity? So task affinities are going to be defined by adding an attribute task affinity, by adding an attribute task affinity. Where this attribute is going to be added, it is going to be added in the activity element, where this particular activity element is present in the Android manifest file. Android manifest file. So the default task affinity is package name. So if you have a default task affinity, the default task affinity will be the package name where the app is going to be declared within it. So whichever the new task will be there, that name should be, whichever the new task will be going to be performed with the task affinity, that name should be unique and different from package name and different from the package name. For example, here is an example. So here Android colon task affinity com dot example dot android dot my name dot new task. So where here the task affinities will be used in conjunction with the single task mode, where we can use this task affinity with by using the single launch mode, by using the single task launch mode, or we can use with the flag underscore activity underscore new underscore tag intent flag also. Where so if you want to use this task affinity, where task affinities can also be used in conjunction with the launch mode, that is activity attribute, that is single task, or you can use with the you can use in use task affinity in conjunction with the intent flag. For which intent flag? That is flag underscore activity underscore new underscore task, where it is going to be placed with the new activity on its in its own named task, its own named task. So what is the so there is another that is reparenting. This reparenting enables a task to move from an activity within a task activity as an activity. So it means that where reparenting means before the task is delivered, so where the particular task will move from one activity to another activity. Another activity means whatever the activity is launched within that activity, it is going to be moved from the activity. The particular enable task can be moved from the activity. So where so if you want to enable this reparenting task affinity, so if you want to enable this reparenting task, so we need to add task affinity attribute, where that attribute should be added within the activity element. So and we need to set the reparenting attribute, that is allow task reparenting to true. So if we want to enable this task reparenting, we need to add task affinity attribute, that is allow task reparenting, where this particular attribute should be set to true, where this particular attribute should be set to true. So this is an example code where here in the Android colon allow task reparenting, where it is going to be set for the value true. This is about task affinity.